Good afternoon, everyone. I want to welcome everybody to our first City Council meeting in Salisbury headquarters. Today is September 5th, 2023, and this is a work session for the Salisbury City Council. So thank you all for attending, and I guess everybody got the memo where the meeting was, because we have a full room, so that's good. So first we will go ahead to the first item on the agenda. And it is a public art master plan presentation. Arts, Business, Culture, and Development Department Director Alan Swiger, Business Development Director Laura Soper, and Public Art Master Plan Consultant Todd Gressy. You all have the floor. We get to test to see if all the new stuff works, and also if he could tap that, that'll turn it on in case he needs. That's our microphone.
We're all learning now.
Our hockey clubs.
All right, well, thank you for having us today, and welcome to the new space. We're excited to have everybody in here. So about a year and a half ago, the Department of Arts, Business, and Culture started this venture of drafting what is a public art master plan. We worked very closely with Jamie Heater, former executive director of the Salisbury Arts and Entertainment District, now known as the Salisbury Art Alliance, so they're still around doing great things in our community. Laura came in to the game as our business development director to be part of the conversation. But the whole time, everything that we did was really attributed to Mr. Todd Gressy. For those of you who haven't met Todd, he is a public art consultant who works out of Philadelphia, but he does a bunch of work down here in the Maryland towns and cities in this area. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to him. What you have in your packet is a very long presentation. That is the entire plan. I don't expect to get through all that today. So we do have a condensed version, just kind of hit the major topics, and then we're open for any kind of further discussion or questions you might have.
It works.
All right. So this room is officially now operational. First of all, it's very nice to see you and meet you, and it's a real pleasure to be here. I just want to start by thanking you for inviting me to your community to work on this project. It is always a privilege to be asked to do this, and it's been a great pleasure working in Salisbury with Alan, Jamie, Laura, and the rest of the team. I'm very happy to be here and to share this with you. We are here today because public art is not a new thing to Salisbury. Salisbury has a great track record in public art. It's been vigorous and notable in particular because it represents a full community effort over the years. Partnerships with neighborhood organizations, businesses, institutions, a combination of public and private resources going into projects. And it is also a track record that represents the city's creative vitality and the resources you have here in your creative community. And that's what makes what's happened here special. This is less a plan about starting something new, but creating a path that helps you continue what you've already been doing, and maybe think strategically about how your resources can be deployed. These are really the questions that every public art plan has to answer. The first is, why is a city in the business of thinking about public art? What's the public purpose? Why is it important to the community? And second, given that, what are the opportunities you have in front of you for doing projects, for doing work, for working with artists in your community? And then third question is, what are the policies, procedures, mechanisms, tools? What's the toolkit for getting there? The big picture, opportunities, and tools. That's what every public art plan has to answer, and that's what this document you have answers. And it is different in every community. It truly is. And so this plan represents Salisbury's answers to those questions. These were some of the more specific questions that the city's leadership asked me at the beginning of this process. And as you see, a lot of these questions are process-oriented. How do we decide what to do? And how do we work with artists? How do we approve things? When we have art, how do we take care of it? And a lot of this pertains in particular to murals. Murals that the city has in the past few years begun to participate in more and more and more. So you'll notice this plan is very heavy in procedure because that is what the city was looking for. And today's presentation is really going to focus on that. As much as I love to give presentations with glorious pictures, today's presentation is really going to be more about the nuts and bolts because that's what's important to do. We've been working on this plan for a year and 3 months, a year and a half or so, and we've undertaken research and outreach to the community in a number of ways, including meetings with citizens groups, business groups, interviews, an appearance at one of the Third Friday festivals with a whole booth and an activity for people, and a couple of community open houses that we held at the former revivals. And here are some of the things that we learned through the process. First of all, Salisbury has strong motivation. There's a genuine and strong interest in the community in continuing and advancing that strong track record that's already been created. Even more interesting to me is that there's a strong creative ecosystem here. It's wonderful to come to a place you don't really know and learn about all those resources. There are entrepreneurs, amazing events, creative workers here, and a university, I think, that punches above its level right now when it comes to its own arts programming. So a lot of resources to work with right here in Salisbury. The next bullet is sort of the summary of what people told us that they are interested in seeing in more art in the community. Beauty, something symbolic or iconic. Reinforcing the idea that Salisbury is a welcoming community, one of the first officially recognized welcoming community in the United States. Fun, interactive, and engaging Salisbury's creative talent. And I think more and more, though it didn't come up as much in the surveys, you'll see in the work that's being done here in Salisbury, people want art that truly reflects the stories of this community. Sometimes the story behind the story, the untold stories, the stories that haven't been recognized. So I think that's another strong goal that people have. And then when asked where people would like to see projects, they mentioned public spaces downtown and parks, the Riverwalk, streetscapes, and so forth. So here's where we shift to the nuts and bolts. This is, I think, the last pretty slide, but it's a pretty slide, I'd say. So the plan covers lots of ground. Like I said, 3 big topics: a big picture, opportunities, and implementation. And I'm only going to talk about some of the nuts and bolts today. There's even more than what I'm going to talk about at this moment. It covers procedures for how you find and select artists, how you have contracts with artists, how you have contracts for the walls that murals are going to go on, protocols for thinking about how you're going to maintain artwork that you own or commission, ideas about funding. I'm going to defer to Mr. Kitzrow for that because we've hashed that out over a number of phone calls. It talks about an application process so that proposals can come from the community for public art, and how to handle proposals for commemorative works and memorials. And I'm going to say it now in case I forget to say it later, but one of the unique aspects of this plan is that it is really attempting to create a portal for ideas to come not just from the city agencies and city projects, but from the community. It's trying to open the door and create a process by which folks who have ideas can pitch them and have them considered in the context of the overall work the city does. Sorry, I'm following my notes here. So this is what this slide is about. Who proposes? How do projects come about? How would they in Salisbury? Well, some would be initiated by city departments. And already you have HCDD, which is initiating projects as part of its community engagement, which I think is a strong asset to the ABCD in downtown. There's been a lot of projects initiated downtown, formerly with the Arts and Entertainment District, but that is something we're familiar with. And there's a lot of opportunities and forthcoming projects that DID is managing. For example, Eastern Shore Parkway could be a potential, or the Rails with Trails project could be a potential. So there'll be a lot of ideas coming from city departments and what the city does. But the plan also sets out a process for proposals to come from outside the city, from community groups, institutions, nonprofits, businesses, and proposals for artwork to be donated, to be loaned, or just placed on city property temporarily, and even a process in case someone wants to propose a commemorative artwork or memorial. One thing I'll just note, I know there's some artists in the room today, but artists aren't mentioned here. And the reason for that is if an artist has an idea, the idea is that they would come in partnership with another organization with their idea. And the reason for that is to make sure that an idea has a threshold level of support before it's formally considered. That way, if an artist can find someone to support their project, like a school or a business, and they can come in, then you know that there's that it's not just a one-off idea, but something that actually has support. So the plan envisions that the process of reviewing, the plan envisions that people can propose projects, either request funding or request permission to use city space. In the case of funding, it outlines an annual process. So once a year there'd be a process to consider that. It wouldn't happen haphazardly. It would happen through a structured annual process. In the case of permission to be on public space, it would happen on a rolling basis. So the annual process for projects proposed by city agents is that ideas would be first reviewed by a technical advisory group. That's a new idea. That would be an interagency committee, those agencies I just mentioned before, who would each look at a proposal and say, yeah, that's consistent with our plans. No, there's no utility lines under where they want to put that thing. No, we're not going to tear that building down, to make sure it's technically feasible. And then the project would be reviewed and prioritized by another new group, a public art committee, which would be a committee of 7 people from Salisbury. The majority of them would have an art or design background, but they could also represent business, civic, institutional, community leadership as well. And that committee would review proposals and prioritize them. How important is this compared to the goals that we have? That would occur once a year, and then the ABCD staff would facilitate that process, and the director would have the final word in approving the recommendations that come from these groups as part of an annual work plan. And that's really the core of the project, of the process, this annual planning process. For community proposals, there would be an additional step, a preliminary feasibility review. So the minute a proposal comes in, it would just be checked to see if it actually passes the muster of being feasible before it's looked at more carefully. If it's not feasible, it will be sent back so that whoever proposed it could work on it further. But otherwise, the process would be the same. For proposals that are seeking site permissions, it would be a similar process, except it would occur on a rolling basis, so you didn't have to wait a year to find out whether you could use space in the park or something like that. In addition, not just the ABC director, but the department director would have to approve the project. So if you're running the Parks Department, sorry, Alan, you'll have to collaborate with the director of parks to figure that one out. But that way, whoever is in charge of stewarding that city asset can make sure that the project is consistent with their own needs and goals. And then there are extra steps involved for commemorative projects, memorials, feasibility review, technical review, merit review, and additional criteria for appropriateness. This is really the kind of commemorative work that's appropriate to our community. And in addition to the ABC director and the department approving it, if they wish, if it's a topic that they feel requires broader community input, then they can refer it either to administration, the higher level staff, or to council for its consideration. Most decisions could occur at the ABCD staff level, but this is one that might need to be referred to the council. So it's really a simple process that has a couple of variants depending on the kind of project. So those are that is really the main job of this plan, is to sort out a process that allows the city to bring consistent decision making to all the opportunities that are in front of it. Now, the other question the plan addresses of this nature is, how is a project managed? If the city is actually going to undertake a public art project, let's just say someone decides it's a good idea to put a sculpture in a roundabout on Eastern Shore Drive when it's rebuilt. So the process for that is that ABCD and the Public Art Committee would establish another entity called a task force, which would be a special committee just for that project. It would involve the department stakeholders, community stakeholders, as well as members of the Public Art Committee. That group, working with the staff, would develop a specific plan for that project. What are we trying to accomplish? What's our budget? What's our schedule? Who are we going to consult with in the community about this? That it's very clear how that project will operate. ABCD staff would manage the artist selection and the kind of artist development of their idea or their concept, collaborating with the Public Art Committee and the task force, and the ABCD staff and this technical advisory group would approve whatever the artist's concept is, to make sure that it is a sound concept and meets with community buy-in. There would be a specific community engagement strategy for each project, and then city staff would actually manage the project. So it's really assigning primary lead responsibility to the ABCD, with consultation with the community task force, with departments and technical advisors for the particular project. So the plan includes a couple of charts about what each entity does. The mayor and council's role would be to establish each year a budget for public art, and you could recommend projects to go through this process that I outlined. City departments each year would recommend projects that they have on their horizon that they would like support for, and then they would consult in the decision making and the management of projects. And then a lot of the work would be in the hands of the ABCD, coordinating the process. And there are three new entities or three new ideas. Again, one is that the technical advisory group, which is an interagency staff group that projects from a technical point of view. The second is a public art committee, which would vet things from a community perspective. Their decisions together would lead to the prioritization of projects. And then for projects that move forward, there would be a task force, which would be a special committee that would be the focal point of discussion about that project. I'm not going to walk through this chart, but it's in the plan. It's kind of it outlines the processes I just described as a flow chart. So that's really the highlights of the processes in the plan. I'm excited about it because I think it kind of unlocks or provides a path to a lot of potential that I see in Salisbury to do great work. One of the ideas in the plan that I think is really special is called the Salisbury Prize, which would be a annual or biannual public art project that would be sort of a competition for people to bring their best ideas forward. Because I think that there's a lot of great ideas simmering in Salisbury, and if challenged and given the opportunity, folks can come up with things that are really amazing. And that really is the hope for this plan, is that it kind of steers the energy and the resources that are already here into something that's really amazing. So thank you again for inviting me here and giving me a platform. And I'm super honored to be the first agenda item in this brand new space. And I wish you well here in all of your work.
Thank you very much.
Any questions or comments from the council?
I'm just going to say, as daughter of a public school art teacher. I love public art. I think it's incredibly vital to the city. And I love this. I think it's well thought out. And the packet that you gave us is incredibly detailed. You know, there's a lot of great information in there. And I know I do it because I actually commissioned one mural to the Salisbury Wycomico County, and that was the mural at the Jackson Park. It was so ironic when I had vision, the artist came, and the same drawings that he had was how I envisioned. So I always think that murals should be visions of things that coincide with life itself in Salisbury and Wycomico County. That's how I look at history. And we need to keep our history alive. So we should do things to generate wealth and health in our city. And I'm so amazed that we have so many murals here in Salisbury. And it was me that tried to implement the one at the DFW, the one that they had there. And they're beautiful. They're very beautiful. And when you look at it, you're so amazed at looking at each and every one of them. I love the idea. And I know it's going to work. And it's going to beautify us.
I'm looking forward to sharing this with my constituents. Thank you so much, and the entire team. One part that I think I'm especially excited about, and I think this is something that resonates with our community, is the extensive chapter that you have in here about community engagement. I'm very pleased to see that you guys are incorporating community feedback and collaboration into this, so I think
I would say ditto to all of that. This is fantastic, and the presentation is exceptionally well done.
And community engagement. When you notice that people are involved in something, they're less prone to destroy it. So the community engagement is what we really need, and we need this to happen, as it has been happening. So I'm a witness to that, because the Billie Jean Jackson Park, that concession stand, and can ditto that it was being broken into and vandalized numerous of times a year. Once we put that mural on that concession stand, we had no problem. Alan can contest to it, we had no problem. So things that are valuable to us, we make them valuable to others.
So if I may, just speaking of community engagement, so next phases, it's kind of important to understand. Hopefully, public art committee goes well. The next agenda item here. Following that, though, on October 4th, we will be back in this room at 5 o'clock for what we would consider the public introduction of the master plan. So for about an hour, we'll go into a little bit more depth, open conversations, get some feedback from the community, and then hopefully get some applicants for the.
Can you do this?
I will copy the submit my application through the process.
What day was that? October 4th.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Yes, I think this is a great idea. And last year when I was talking to some of the people that travel with the National Folk Festival, they say when they go into towns and they see the little things like the electric boxes all over downtown being painted, that's symbol of a community that takes pride in itself. And those are the communities that the National Folk Festival likes to go to. So they enjoyed being there. So with that, we will go to the next item, which is a resolution to establish a public art committee. Business Development Director Laura Soper.
Okay, well, the second agenda item, and riding on the coattails of Bob's presentation, is the resolution to officially create the Public Art Committee, the PAC. As we mentioned, they're going to be the ones that help the city vet applications and provide recommendations to our staff. It will be comprised of 7 members and 1 council member, non-voting. We hope that you will join our PAC, and happy to answer any questions about about the resolution to create that.
Having enough numbers?
Any questions or comments on that?
No, let's get it going.
Yeah, let's get it done.
I have a feeling people are gonna come
Consensus to
in.
move that forward?
Yes.
And then that leads to the next item, which is an ordinance to accept grant for expenses associated with a public art fund. Ms. Soper?
More good news. The Maryland State Arts Council provides the opportunity to apply for operating support to designated arts and entertainment districts. This year we applied for that support to help fund a public art fund that can be used to support art projects in the district area. Again, those artists would follow the same process that Todd reiterated. It would go in front of the PAC. We would vet it by them. So included in your packet is the grant agreement for review, and if anyone has any questions, contact me.
Questions or comments?
Love it.
Especially for this, I think this is a good thing. So consensus to move this forward?
Yes.
And one more item with Ms. Soper is an ordinance to establish a downtown ambassador program.
Yes, not public art related, but we have stood up the Downtown Ambassador Program in downtown Salisbury. We've split that program between daytime and evening shifts with a focus on beautification, safety, and hospitality in the downtown corridor. They'll check in with businesses, they'll be picking up trash, they'll be sanitizing areas, providing hospitality calls. They had their first official day today, both daytime and evening ambassadors. So we're in that soft launch period. We're really excited about providing this program to our constituents, and I'm happy to answer any questions with that.
Questions or comments from the council?
I love it. And I'm glad we were able to roll over employees that are already existing from the garage to this program. That was really great. I'm excited. Very excited.
I have a few questions. I did want to get a better understanding about the unfilled positions. I think through the police department, that some of this funding will be, I guess, moved over for that. It says several open positions. How many positions? And between now and the end of the year, we will not fill those positions.
I'd like
Police
to,
department.
can I pull,
Chief?
Chief, can I pull you up to answer some of the budget questions? I have some
questions, so that's why he's.
Yeah, I have some roundabout numbers, but I know he could probably dive into the real details of it,
Okay.
sorry.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they were asking about some of the unfilled positions and whether we thought that they'd be filled within the year and what that number looks like.
Well, I'm happy to tell everybody that our recruiting numbers are looking good. That's a really good thing. And so I'm hopeful that some of those candidates will work out for us. The backgrounds are good. We are trying to bring on candidates sooner than later, so we're changing for our recruiting and hiring practices. To answer your question, it's a little early in the game to say with some of these backgrounds if it's going to pan out or not, but the numbers are looking good. We currently have, and I checked this number before I left the ED to make sure I was right, but we currently have the ones we just hired, which is 3 in the last couple of weeks. We have 10 vacancies. That's not including any frozen positions. So with 10 vacancies, that's a daunting task to say we're going to fill all 10 within a 12-month period. That would really be a stretch. So to answer your question, I think it's unlikely that we will fill 10 in a year. Double-edged sword, because we're going to spend the money on some other things that we need, but we certainly want to fill the vacancies. But I think it's probably more realistic at this point to say I think a good number to give you probably 5 to 7, because about 50, 60%, about 50% time, so about maybe 5 open. But I'd like to give you a more exact number, but I'd love to be able to come back in a month or two and say, hey, listen, these candidates really look great, and talk to you about some other things as far as I'm free. But I think there's a competition out there for candidates like you wouldn't believe. It's literally yesterday, negotiating with a couple of folks from Ocean City, like their summer pool is getting ready to go back to college. And so we're talking with a couple of their candidates, and we're literally they're talking to 2 or 3 agents locally, sheriff's department, and whatnot. So it's a matter of what we, it's a matter of where you want to work. You want to work here, here's what you have to offer. You want to work there, here's what you have to offer. So we've had some success. We've had some that we lost that. So I would say 5 to 7 would be a fair number to keep you doing this. But that is, and I would say we're safe. That's a safe thing. That would be, that would be ample funds to fund this. Hope that answers.
I think the exciting thing about this program is that they will be working closely with the police department as eyes and ears. They'll be walking the downtown beat every day, so if they see something that concerns them, they would reach out to the police department to rectify it, or they would resolve it if they could.
I have just wanted to elaborate more, if you could, on the specific roles. We've given a general overview, but maybe just for anyone watching, what this ambassador program might all entail, and how they can use the service when they can visit.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, our daytime program they have more of a focus on kind of the beautification and hospitality of downtown. So you'll see them working the beat, cleaning up trash, prepping for events. They'll also be providing hospitality rides for folks that may be mobility limited, or if they feel unsafe, you can call the 1-800 number and the ambassador will come to you. They'll bring you to your location, your destination. So that's kind of our daytime team. Our nighttime team, they are more focused on kind of the safety and hospitality piece. So walking again the downtown, just kind of keeping eyes and ears open. They will be doing regular sweeps of the parking garage, again, just looking for property damage, checking for safety issues. And again, they will be doing that hospitality ride piece. So anyone who calls in the evening hours could get a ride.
Is there a number for the free or 562?
Yeah, we have a 1-800 number set up. It's 1-833-DTWN-SBY, downtown SBY. So please share that with your constituents. We want to see this service used. We think it will bring a lot of value to our downtown.
Are we going to post this as well, I'm assuming, around downtown as well? Okay.
Yeah, we just started today, so they're going in, they're meeting the business owners, they're talking to people coming to downtown to let them know about the program and let them know, folks.
Could you repeat that number again?
Sure, it's 1-833-DTWN-SBY.
April, and then there is a poster on the downtown Salisbury website too, just if you want to share that around.
And they will operate, I believe it's Tuesdays through Wednesday, 10 a.m. to 12 a.m. Thursday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 2 a.m.
As far as positive, the interaction we've had with the group is very professional. And again, as mentioned, they're really just there to be extra eyes and for us. Something not necessarily engage unless they have to call us.
The only question I have is, there going forward, is there a budget going to be out of the police department, or is that under ABCD?
I believe it's going to come under us since we're administering the program.
Council President, as we look into this moving forward beyond the FY24 budget that we're in right now, we will be exploring how well it's going, where we need to ramp up, where we need to scale back. So as we go through budget discussions in this upcoming budget cycle, this will be a topic of discussion, whether it falls here, if there's new funding, if we're repurposing funding, et cetera. So it'll be a process, an ongoing process. But knowing that we have funding right now and need right now, that's a great resource.
Any other questions or comments? Everybody have, do you have consensus to move this forward?
Yes.
All right, it'll be on the next meeting. Thank you. Next up is a budget amendment for field operations, and we have field operations Deputy Director Sam Ireland.
afternoon.
Just make sure that it's white screen.
Okay. I wish I was here under better circumstances, but not. The Department of Field Operations finds themselves in a rough spot with the Division of Sanitation. Our overtime budget's depleted. I think this is the culmination of factors, but two major factors: an expanding residential footprint and the deteriorating state of our fleet. We do have two new side loading sanitation trucks and a single rear loading sanitation vehicle ordered, but they are not projected to be here until after the overtime budget is depleted. The figure we calculated is based on the current average of overtime multiplied by the remaining pay periods. That's up to date as of today. That's where the figure you see before you came.
Essentially, what we're looking at is a short-term issue. Luckily, this council was able to fund additional sanitation trucks when we repurposed funding earlier in the spring. Just lead time is a little longer. So just to echo those points, because of vehicles malfunctioning and not working, we've had to increase our days, which is creating overtime. So we see this as a short-term issue, but once we get vehicles, it's important to continue to invest in our fleet. This should be a one-time situation. Any questions or comments?
I do want to keep celebrating. Same time, I really don't have a problem with,
We corresponded with Jordan Ray, the media specialist. We really do our best to keep the public as aware and be as transparent as we can. If the route goes over, it goes over. And we may have to extend pickup even into the next day. So that's our goal as well.
I know we appreciate all the work that these sanitation crews do, and they're out there every day, weather like this, and it's a hard job. Take care of.
Any questions or comments? Yes, consensus moving forward.
Yes.
Thank you. All right. Next is an RFP for an off-site net aggregate meter solar system presentation. Procurement Director Jennifer Miller and Richard Anderson from CQI Associates. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everybody. Actually, Mr. Anderson couldn't be here. He has COVID. As we sent his associate, Mr. Joe Tabling. Joe actually is a resident of Salisbury, so he's here today, and he'll do the presentation after I introduce him. So I'm here this evening to just bring you up to speed on this RFP that the Department of Procurement put out a few months ago. We did this as a response to the recommendations contained within the FY fiscal year 24 to fiscal year 31 energy management plan for the city of Salisbury. If you may remember, that energy management plan spoke a lot about the Climate Solutions Now Act of 2022, contained in Senate Bill 528, which that act calls for Maryland businesses to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 60% by 2031. In this energy management plan that was developed by CQI Associates, CQI listed several recommendations for the city, some reducing greenhouse gas emissions more than others. So the first chunk that we bit off there was maybe about a year ago, we did solicit a proposal for what we call a behind-the-meter solar project. It's the one that we're working on at the City of Salisbury wastewater treatment facility right now. Okay, that was the first one. Again, that sort of takes a chunk away from those greenhouse gas emissions to help us reduce our levels. This is part two that's also going to take a big bite out of that. But Mr. Tabling will explain that a little bit more here as we go along. So this request for proposal, which was RFP A-23-108, went live on May 5th, 2023, and we did receive 3 proposals. We felt that CQI Associates was the most competent firm to evaluate those proposals, the technical proposals that we received,
and give the city a recommendation back as to which of the three proposers the city should consider. So that's really why we're here today. This is in advance of me bringing to the council an awarded bid for the vendor we're going to talk about tonight. So with that, the three proposals that we received, the first was from a company called Nexamp Solar out of Boston, Massachusetts. The second was from a company called CI Renewables out of Baltimore, Maryland. And the last was a company called Amoresco Incorporated from Columbia, Maryland. So again, this is just a proposal to tell you a little bit more about Nexamp's proposal, why it was selected, why it's important as part of this FY24 to FY31 energy management plan for the city of Salisbury. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Pavlin, and we'll be happy to answer your questions afterwards.
Thank you. All right. So what we want to do is first give everybody an overview, go over the background of how we got to this point. The city has a current contract with Constellation New Energy for supply services until June of 2025. Contract rate that you're presently paying is a 0.05184 per kilowatt, which includes 100% clean energy. To put that in perspective, Delmarva Power's current rate, default rate, we're sitting at close to 13 cents per kilowatt. At one point last year, we were almost at 17 cents. So it has come down, but it's still much higher than when we started working with this. The electricity budget for 2024 is $2.920,300,000. The annual electricity consumption based off the 2023 data is for the street and parking lights is a little over 3.9 million kilowatts. The facility and pump and lift station is almost 7.5 million kilowatts. And then the wastewater treatment plant is at 6.9, a little over 6.9 million kilowatts, for a total of a little over 18 million kilowatts. As we just mentioned, the Climate Solution Now Act of 2022 was passed. And in that act, it requires everybody to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions by 60% by 2031 below the 2006 baseline levels, so we hit a net zero emission by 2045. Now, the city's baseline in 2006 was 6,280 metric tons of carbon dioxide. The fiscal year 2021 greenhouse gas emissions was 5,530 metric tons. The 2031 greenhouse gas emissions goal is 2,510 metric tons. So the reduction target is 3,020 metric tons of CO2 emissions. So for 2006, the start baseline was 6,280 metric tons. Reduction to date so far was 750 metric tons. So as of 2022, the balance was 5,530 metric tons. The goal by 2031 is to reduce it another 2,510, which would get us to the 3,020 metric tons. Right now, the city has conducted assessment of city-owned facility and sites for development of the on-site solar system, which has already been implemented. That's at the school site. That is anticipated to be up and running as of August of 2024. This will give an estimate of 2,513,000, little over 13 million annual kilowatts, which leaves a balance of 4,387 million kilowatts. The solar reduction estimate is 1,100 metric tons, with emissions starting as of 2025. That will leave a balance of 1,920 metric tons to achieve by 2031. Additional site opportunities are extremely limited. So the option of looking at off-site solar systems by a third-party contractor, solar contractor, is the best option. When we look at the opportunities that are out there, the system operating is considered a net aggregate meter installation, which means that it's not on-site. We're going to be basing it off of an off-site installation, and the potential reduction by using this off-site installation is anywhere from 1,850 to 200 or 2,200 metric tons. A request for proposal was sent out in May of 2022, and the evaluation of proposals, the submission by NextAmp Solar was selected to review and negotiate. NextAmp Solar proposed to build two systems, one in Centerville and one in Stockton. The one in Centerville is a little over 4 million kilowatts annually produced. Stockton is a little over 4.6 million. That gives us a total of a little over 8.8 million annual kilowatts. The potential start date would be October of 2024, with it ending and being operational as of May, June of 2025. This coincides with the agreement that we have in place right now when it expires. The rate would be a $7.85 per kilowatt with an annual escalation of 2%. The contract would be a 20-year power purchase agreement. So you're not putting any money out whatsoever. The agreement in terms and conditions are pending final negotiations between NextAmp Solar, the city attorney, city staff, and CPY. The city would contract with a third-party supply service supplier for the balance of the non-solar load beginning June 2025 of a little over 6.8 million kilowatts, which is basically your street lights. Key considerations for the council to review. First year is the 20-year agreement. The second is the NextAmp Solar system as an off-site and turnkey owned, constructed, operated, and maintained by the developer. So you're not going to be doing anything. City funding of construction is not required, so you don't have the outlay of cash. City pays for the generated energy based on per kilowatt rate. NextAmp Solar has also agreed, which is nice, to a 90% performance guarantee, assuring that we're going to have 90% coverage of what they've agreed upon. The city has no obligation at the end of the 20-year agreement, which is also very nice. The Delmarva Power will allocate the solar production as a credit for the designated accounts, meaning that you're going to select where this energy is going to go to what accounts and in what order they'll go. The contract, again, would be at $7.85 per kilowatt, 20-year term, 2% escalation each year. The production would be a little over 8.8 million kilowatts a year. The 1 year estimated cost would be $697,000. That's for the kilowatts being generated. The estimated date for commercial operation will be between October 2024 and June of 2025. It reduces the gas house emissions between 1,850 and 2,200 metric tons. The proposed off-site solar system, additional 8.8 million annual kilowatts, will be produced by renewable energy, giving us budget stability for 20 years. Additional emission reduction is 1,850 to 2,200 metric tons, so we reach our goal. This option was determined to provide the best opportunity to permit additional city electricity accounts to transition to a renewable energy source. The combined WWTFP and off-site solar project will and reduce the greenhouse gas emissions by 2,950 to 3,200 metric tons
beginning in June of 2025. The reduction goal is 3,020 metric tons by 2031. So we're hitting that far in advance. What's the next step? Well, we need to finalize the power purchase agreement for signature by October of 2023. We need to apply to Delmarva for the utility interconnection approval. That's by November of 2023. NextAmp Solar conduct an environmental assessments and permit application process. That would be between January to March of 2024. NextAmp Solar would proceed with final design between April to June of 2024. We will then receive the Delmarva utility interconnection and related permit approval between June and July of 2024. Installation would start between 2024 to March of 2025. Commercial operation approval would be between 2024 and June 2025. Cost impact on a 2025 budget between July 25 and June of 2026. So this is basically how it would look when it's finished, and your aggregated meter installation is on the left-hand side. Is basically how it would look. So you have an idea of the status. Questions? Questions from the council?
It's a lot. It's a lot. I'm going to be perfectly honest. Now, giving us all of that analysis, where would this go?
Well, the off-site, you're not going to see it around here. Like I said, there's one facility, it's up in Chestertown, the other one's in Stockton. They're for centers. Because there is no space around here. That's why we're looking at an off-site location for this.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, could I ask a question? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Just a couple of questions. One, I've been through one of these before. Number one, and it wasn't up there, so I'm assuming this is correct. No maintenance requirements on our part.
Correct.
No liability.
Correct.
And no remediation.
Correct. Any other questions from the council?
So the only other comment I would make, he did hit it in there, but just to reemphasize it, there is a solar project that is happening at the wastewater treatment plant. They're both going on simultaneously. One is off-site metering, one is on-site. But between the two of those, they help us meet our goals ultimately. So it's understanding that there's two things going on.
So I guess the next step would be, is this going to be on Mondays for the RFP?
The next step would be me putting it on the council agenda for award of bid to NextAmp Solar.
Okay.
And then from there, we handle the Office of Procurement along with CQI Associates, and the legal team will work through the power purchase agreement with NextAmp Solar. And assuming we can reach a good agreement, then this will be over.
Thank you for the presentation. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Next, several discussions. First one's going to be recovery groups and homes. So that's going to be City Attorney Ashley Boucher and Assistant City Administrator Tom Stevens.
Good afternoon, everyone. How are you?
Good.
Hello.
Okay, so I made some notes. I believe the last time this issue, when it was first raised, was in August the 7th at that work session. So I've highlighted what has transpired since that meeting and then can answer any questions that you have. So following the 8/7 work session by email dated 8/10, the city sent Homes for Hope the same correspondence that was sent to Oxford House, which resulted in that 2017 lawsuit against the city under the Fair Housing Act and the ADA. We had mentioned at that work session that we believe that that court's decision guides how we are handling this matter because it provides direct guidance to us. And I think we all are in agreement that Section 1524 1620 of the code addresses this current issue, and that section gives the authority to HCDD to make a determination about whether a functional family exists, and also in making that determination shall make any necessary and reasonable accommodations. And so, as you know, the city has been without a director of HCDD, which is why Mr. Stevenson is sitting here to my left, because he's been acting as a designee. And when Mr. Boda comes on board officially, we will both bring him up to speed, and then he will be taking point on this in his new role. So, the 810 letter went out, and that requested detailed information to provide by Homes for Hope so that we could make a determination about any request for an accommodation, and also imposed a deadline for a response of 9/8. Homes for Hope, through its attorney, responded reasonably promptly with a detailed letter outlining the legal authority, but it did not address the case as it pertained to the homes on Middle Boulevard. It was like a law review article on the Fair Housing Act. So my office responded to the Homes for Hope attorney directly, and that letter was dated August the 24th, pointing out that Homes for Hope had yet to submit any supporting information to the city. It had neither informed the city of what specific accommodations it was seeking, or provided the city with any information that could be used to determine if a proposed accommodation was both necessary and reasonable. And we reiterated the 9/8 deadline. And in that same letter, we notified Homes for Hope attorney that we had instructed the city to proceed with code enforcement to correct any violations presented by Homes for Hope if we did not receive the information by the 9/8 deadline. We have since received formal requests, one for 311 and, help me out, is it 322? 322 Middle.
311 and 223.
223, sorry. So Homes for Hope submitted separate requests for each of the properties and for reasonable accommodation, and we are in the process of reviewing those requests and also working with Homes for Hope to try to schedule an inspection. A decision will not be made until after the 9/8 deadline, because they have up to Friday to present any other information that they think is necessary. And so that's where we are. I think that probably provides a nice jumping off point, because Mr. Voda will be officially, we start that Monday. So Tom and I will start working with him, and we'll look at the information submitted. Homes for Hope, again, bears the burden of proving that they need this request for an accommodation and why they need it. So the onus is on them to make that case and to present the evidence. There's nothing that the city needs to do affirmatively. We look and see what they provide, because it is a very fact-specific inquiry. So that's where we are.
For that update.
Yes, appreciate
I think it's just been a waiting, but I'm very happy to address them.
This is Friday.
Correct.
This Friday.
Yes.
And then after this Friday, when they haven't submitted the information?
They have submitted information.
They have?
Yes, but we had given them until 9/8, so we're going to wait until Friday to see if they submit anything else, and also give them the opportunity to try to work with us for an inspection. But then, based upon when that deadline comes and goes, if we get no other information, we will make a decision based upon what has been submitted.
And what other information do they need? That's up to them.
Just to clarify, I think to April's question, to reemphasize, if the deadline comes and goes and nothing is submitted or does not meet reasonable accommodation, they would then be in violation of
Correct.
4.2, which then we would
Start issuing code compliance. Yes.
That was the question.
Yes. To start with code compliance.
be a 40.
Code
Enforcement action.
Yes, thank you.
I just want to make sure I'm clear, because to me, this is a conversation that is like a twofold discussion going on. There's immediately addressing comes to vote. But then there's also the long-term discussion on making sure that there's some oversight when it comes to these houses, correct? Okay.
We believe that the code actually is specific enough to govern this instance. I think we need to figure out, because the onus is on those who want to start a recovery home to come to the city and make that request. So we have to figure out as a city, if they're not coming to affirmatively, how we're finding out about that. So I think it may just be more in terms of code enforcement going out, just like when, in terms of Fortitude, to see if it's a registered rental, how many people are living there. So I think the parameters are already in place. We just kind of need to figure out a little bit, yes, how we can better enforce them.
Questions or comments?
Thank
you.
So I guess we will keep everybody posted and try to get that in the future.
Thank you, Andy.